In this video, we're going to talk about creating maps for Star Wars Shatterpoint in Tabletop Simulator. Hey guys, Rich from Rich Big Gaming. Hope everyone is doing fantastically well. Welcome to this, another slightly different, again, Star Wars Shatterpoint video. I have been busy away over the past couple of weeks building lots of new maps, 5 new maps in total for the Star Wars Shatterpoint TTS mod. Hopefully you guys have had a chance to take a look at some of them. We've tried to make them, or I've tried to make them even a little bit more thematic, a little bit more fun to play, and really honing in on those elements of the game where elevation really does matter, and trying to make them as fun and interesting to play as possible. And it's fair to say that when I first started out, I knew absolutely nothing, but over the last week, 2 weeks, it's been a little bit of a crash course, and I wanted to share some of my hints, tips, tricks with you guys so that you guys can go away and you can actually build your own maps. And stick around until the end of the video, because we do have a competition upcoming, or it is about to be announced in this video even, about how you can create your maps and submit them for entry, and there are some potential prizes in there as well. So without further ado, let's jump in and take a look at how I build my maps for Shatterpoint in Tabletop Simulator. So starting off then, guys, the first thing that you want to do is head over to Tabletop Simulator. Obviously, you want to click on the create. I always create them in single player. There's no real reason not to create them in multiplayer. It doesn't really make much of a difference. But go into single player here, and you want to open up the latest version of the mod that you can see right there. And this will bring up everything that is in the mod right now. And you'll see there that we have the brand new Imperial hangar map that I've been busy working on over the last couple of days and has just gone into the mod. But we need to start off and we need to clear this workspace essentially for ourselves to be able to start a brand new map. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head on over here, and you can see we've got clear table, drop bags, and save table. Well, for this one, we're just going to press the clear table, and this is going to take absolutely everything off the workspace, giving us this play area completely free of anything, including a actual mat, a gaming mat to play on. So the first thing that I like to do is get that mat down. Now, depending on whether you're building a Naboo board, whether it's going to be set in a forest, is it going to be set on the shoreline of the Scarif, wherever it's going to be, you're going to want to put a map down. So I'm going to go into my objects. Now, I've already got these saved, and what I'm going to do is create a little asset bundle here for some of the basic things that you need. I'm not going to put all of the assets in there, but I'm going to put a starter base in there, and I'm going to put the objective tokens in there. That way then you've got the right size board and you've got the right size tokens with all the correct functions and things like that on there. So I'm simply going to pick this green base here, and I'm going to drop it in the middle of the board. I'm going to try and line it up mostly where it needs to be. Now, I'm going to lock this in place. Now, you may be thinking, Rich, though, this is just a green map. What about if I want it to be a desert? What about if I want it to be any other sort of terrain or anything like that? Well, I'm going to head on over to Microsoft Paint 3D. Yes, guys, the secret, although it's been out a little while, I do almost everything in Microsoft Paint 3D. It's sad, I know. I do have access to Photoshop because I recently, and Canva and other things like that, because I recently upgraded my editing software to Adobe Pro and got everything that comes with that. I've used them, I've tried using them. I just really like Microsoft Paint 3D. I know how to use it. It's really easy to use. So let's jump over to that, and I'll show you how I get my other maps in there. So now I am over at Microsoft Paint 3D. It does always make me chuckle when people find this out. And all I've done is I have opened up that exact same asset that I had in TTS. You'll be able to find in your mod folders whereabouts it is. But I've just taken that exact same map and I have opened it here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a screenshot of a map that I have previously used. And the way that I get these is I basically look for them on the internet. I look into some assets that are already out there from other mods and things, and I just take a screenshot of them, guys. It is that simple. So let's have a look then at this hangar one that I've used for my latest map. So all I'm going to do is position this. I'm going to increase the size of it, and you'll notice that it keeps the dimensions. So I'm going to pop this here, make sure my entire map is covered. I'm then going to save this, and then I'm going to go over to TTS and I'm going to add it as a custom overlay to the existing map that I've got. So let's jump back to TTS and I'll show you what I mean. Okay guys, so we are here. All I'm going to do is right click on the map, go to custom, and then I'm looking at the top image. So I'm going to browse my local files, and you can see I've got a few saved here already, but I've got this hangar mat that I already had. You can see I've got a Scarif one, a snow one, a street level one, woodland, so on and so forth. I'm just going to double click on it. I'm going to press cloud. You need to make sure that it is cloud. Hangar mat, that's fine. Press upload. And then when we press import, it's going to bring that map in place for us. So we can now lock this in place, and then this becomes the starting point and the canvas for us to build our entire map on. Now from here, what you want to make sure you do is that you save the game. Save it as a local game for yourself. So all you need to do for this is press games, go into save and load. As you can see, I've got lots of different versions here. And then I'm just going to save this. I'm going to overwrite my map save that I've got here. So overwrite this, save it. And then when I go back into my games, if I just go to the main menu here a second. So go back to the main menu, give it 1 second to do it. There we go. And then when I go back to create game, single player, go to my save and load file. I've got my rich mid map save. Load this in, and it's going to load the actual save game in that you had, not the original TTS mod. So it means that you don't need to do it all in one sitting. You can do some, come back to it, and you've always got that save game there. So we've got the canvas for our map build, but we're going to need some assets. And guys, I have found the best place for all things Star Wars. So I'll jump over back to TTS and I'll show you exactly what that is. So again, I'm going to press create game here. I'm going to go to single player. I'm just going to go into my workshop, and these are the ones that I've been using. But the main one is this one here. Star Wars RPG asset. You can see what it looks like. I'll leave a link down in the description below so you guys can go and find that. And I'm going to load this game up and I'll show you exactly what comes in this mod and how many assets are in there for you to be able to use. Okay guys, so we are in the mod, and you may think, okay, that's a decent amount of assets that we've got there. Give this mod a moment or two to load in. Wait until it said load complete before you start trying to do any things. I'm running a pretty beefy PC on a good internet connection, and it can still take 15 to 20 seconds for all of this to load in for me. So we do have some nice assets here, but if we zoom out, guys, each one of these, we've got vehicles, nature, characters, decor, some urban stuff, and some interiors. We've got some maps on the side there as well. So first of all, let's just start and take a look at the maps. So if I just search in here, you'll see we've got a whole, no, wrong one, table terrain, sorry. We've got a whole bunch of different maps that we can use. So let's say we like this woodland one here. And this is what I was talking about when it comes to making sure you take a screenshot rather than just trying to use this raw file. This is the wrong size map for the 3x3 map that we play on in Shatterpoint. So again, all I do with this is I will hold it here like so, whatever angle I want, and then I'll just print screen or take a screenshot, and then I'll use that image and take it into the map as I showed you earlier. But if we look at all of these, we've got huts, we've got platforms, some Naboo stuff there as well, space structures. Go around the other side, we've got all sorts of different little assets, Star Wars Geebles in here as well. So if we have a quick search in here, you know, we've got everything from, you know, vents just to add a little bit of extra sort of, you know, making it look a little bit more realistic. You know, you've got little control panels on there as well. This is the #1 asset mod that I have found on TTS, and it is just absolutely brilliant. So highly recommend it. This is what I use for 99% of everything that I do. I found some other bits elsewhere, and I'll show you where I've got those when it comes to lighting and things like that. But this is absolutely amazing. Don't go out there trying to build your own assets. They exist already, and I'll show you in a little bit later on in the video how we can take a single asset and change it and build an entire board just from one asset, but make it look very different and change the dynamics of it. So we've gone through how to build a mat. We know where to get all of those absolutely amazing resources from. But the next thing I like to do is I like to lay out the map itself. And what I mean by that is not necessarily the pieces of terrain, but the actual objective markers themselves, because we need to make sure that the terrain fits around the objective markers, not the objective markers fitting around the terrain. So let's jump back over to TTS. I've got the save up here that we had before, and I have just got in my saved, I have got the actual objective marker itself. So let's just put this down here. Again, I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it into a little bag somewhere. It might even be behind here, but I'll put this somewhere on the map so you can just grab that. And it's got all of the functionality built into it, so you can snap things to it. You can also cycle through it and make it contested, uncontested, so on and so forth. Now, depending on what you're building a map for, whether it's the shifting priorities or whether it's the sabotage showdown, you're going to have different coordinates for the actual objectives themselves. And I'm going to put on screen now, so you should see the coordinates for every single one of the objectives. And once they're in place, so let's just take this one for example, I'm going to lock this in place. I'm going to go to my little gizmo here, and we'll talk about how good this is later. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that it's in the right position. So this is the central objective. So this will be 0 and 0. You don't want to press 0 on here. If we do, it will disappear under the map and we won't be able to see it. So at ground level, it's usually 1.06. But the most important ones are the X and Z position, or X and Z position. And then what I like to do is lift them high up. Now, that just means they're not going to get in the way of the terrain. And then you can, again, put your extra tokens or your extra objective markers around the outside, set them all up, and then that gives you an idea of where terrain wants to be. Where do you want overlapping things? Where do you want objectives on the ground? Where do you want them high up? So on and so forth. So now we need to start thinking about the different assets that we want to use. I've already shown you where you can get them from. It's really easy. All you need to do is right click on an asset, save it as an object, and then save it into a folder for yourself on Tabletop Simulator. But I want to show you a couple of hints and tips that I've discovered along the way about the different types of terrain that you want to try and avoid, the ones that are really good to use, and also how you can manipulate the same piece of terrain to actually work in many different ways for you. So once again, let's jump back over to TTS. Okay then guys, so let's start by looking at two pieces of terrain, and I'm going to show you why one is really good to use when you're building maps and the other one is not so good. First thing I want to say is I always like to name my terrain. Now the reason for that is when we get to moving them around and things like that, it just makes it much easier. And if you saw what I did there, it was just as simple as right click, go to name, click on name, put a name in there, and then when you hover over them, you'll see what they are. So let's put this one to a side a second, and then let's start with this square rock. And actually, before we do, I want to just show you guys, I hate having the grid on. So just right click, turn the grid off. As you can probably tell, this is not a suitable piece of terrain right now for Shatterpoint because it's too small. But this was a piece of terrain that I was looking at using. So what I want to do is make it bigger. So to make it bigger, I simply right click, go to scale, and then scale up like so. And I wanted to make it big enough so that characters could fit on these individual squares and jump from the squares and things like that. And lock it in place just by pressing L. You can also right click and go to lock. And then I want to get a character and see how they actually work with the piece of terrain. You'll notice this is also see-through, so it's not going to be great for the middle of the board, but to line the edge or something like that, it could work quite nicely. So I'm going to pick up Asajj and see, yep, she fits perfectly fine on top. You know, there's a little bit of a gap there. She doesn't quite fall down, as in, you know, slant her base, but that's fine, not a problem at all. And I always like to check with both a small base and a bigger base. And once again, we can see there that the B2s fit on perfectly fine. But I also want them to be able to jump on these other parts as well. So let's take Asajj and let's see if she fits on this part here. And we've come across a problem. So the problem with this piece of terrain is that it hasn't been individually built so that each of these parts are individual parts. It's been built and is one single 3D block. So the collision on this doesn't work very well at all. Even if we go down to the bottom here, like I can't get her into the corner because it sees this as being one block that takes up this whole space here. So even before I start to use a piece of terrain, I like to make them larger. And if it's something I want people to be able to stand on, I get a couple of characters and make sure that they're not either falling through it or make sure that it doesn't have some weird physics like this. So for me, unfortunately, even though it's a really cool looking piece of terrain, it doesn't fit the bill. So let's get rid of that. Let's take our snowy mound. Let's again take that grid off there and let's make it a little bit bigger. Let's lock it in place with the L, and then let's once again try a couple of characters on here, and you can see that they work absolutely fine. No problems on there whatsoever. So perfect. I have found sort of a rock that I really like, and this is the one that I'm going to use. Now you may look at that and go, Rich, that rock doesn't really seem to match the board that you are on, and you would be right, but there is a way for us to be able to get around this. This isn't going to work for every single piece of terrain, but I particularly like this one because it's a snow mound, so it's white. So if I go to color tint, I can actually manipulate and change the color. Let's try this. Let's try this color here. Ooh, I mean, it's a cool looking color, but it's a little bit bright for my liking. So let's go back on. Let's make it a little bit darker, maybe more into the sort of the brown area. Click OK. And I like that. I think that's, yeah, I really like that. It's a cool looking piece of terrain, and we can actually do a lot with just this one piece of terrain. So let's unlock it. Let's get it into the position that we want it to be. I've removed my objectives, but I know that, you know, there is going to be there or thereabouts. So that looks fine. That's perfect. Let's lock this in place. But I now want to use this again. So I just Control click, Control C, Control V, and I now have another one of my snow mounds that are no longer snow mounds that I can place somewhere else. But let's say, okay, Rich, but we've just got the same piece of terrain now, time and time again. It doesn't make for a very thematic board. It's not very interesting. What we can do is, once again, if we lock it in place, I always like to lock in place whenever I use my gizmo tool. So F8 gizmo, I'm going to click on here again, and you'll notice that we can change the scale individually. When we right clicked and upscaled, it did everything as one. But with this one, if I go to the y-axis, which is going to be up and down, if I make this a 3.5, I'll just make it a 3. Ooh, we've now got a much bigger piece of terrain, giving us a different elevation. We can also change the shape of it further. So let's copy and paste this one again. Let's just unlock so it goes to the floor, lock it again. We can change the actual size of it from other sides as well. So maybe this goes to be a 0.5. Let's put this down and make this 1.5 again, like this. We can make this longer if we want, so that could be 0.6. So all of a sudden, we've now got a different sized piece of terrain and something that looks completely different. And once we add other bits in here, you'll see how that can work. So cool, we've now got 3 pieces of terrain on our board. But what about if I want to make things look a little bit more interesting? As we know, rocks in particular, the way they form, how do I get things to be overlapping? Because if I unlock this, and let's say that I wanted this to be in here, I only wanted a little bit of this showing as like a little ledge or something like that, but there's no way of being able to push that into there. So all I have to do, once again, lock it in place, go to my gizmo tool. You notice when I move out, this is the play area. So that's all this is doing, is it's just showing us the play area itself. And actually, I'll show you one other thing before we do go, because I did just notice something on my board there. So we're going to go to here. Again, we've got our little tools. Now we can rotate it if we wanted. So if we set it to 0, re-click on it, we can then move this and move this over to here. Let's come out. Because they're locked in place, as long as we don't unlock these, then they're going to be absolutely fine. They're not going to move. So now we've got a far more interesting piece of terrain where we've got 2 different ledges on there at 2 different levels. And again, we've used the same asset, but created something that looks completely different. I did just notice my board was out of place. So to move the board, we once again just use the gizmo tool. You want this to be set in the middle at 0.96. I'm just going to go to 0 and then 0. And then when we look back out at our place board or our play area, you can see that it doesn't overlap or anything like that. So that's just where you want to make sure that tool is. And guys, there's lots of things you can do with it. You can take a piece of terrain that's designed for one thing, stretch it, make it taller, make it thinner, and it just creates almost endless possibilities. If we take a look at this Dathomir board that I did, every single one of these mounds is that white snow mound. They are all just, with the exception of this one in the corner, sorry, I do apologise, with the exception of this one. But all these other ones are the exact same piece of terrain that we've manipulated the size and shape of. As you can see, we've got a 3-tier one here. These are all at different elevations. And yeah, it's really, really simple to do. It just takes a little bit of playing around with, getting used to, but you can do a hell of a lot. You just need to make sure that you've got the right type of asset before going into it. So the next thing, guys, I want to talk about is Ingress Points. Ingress Points are a very, very important part of making any map. And whilst we get lots of ladders in the core box and other such things, remember, it doesn't have to be a ladder. Pick something that is thematic. So, you know, yes, we've got a couple of nice ladders here that, you know, are absolutely fine. Again, I like to name them, but I like to name them as an ingress points. When people are using the map, they can clearly see that that is what they are for. So we've got a couple of ladders. You could use dead trees as ingress points. We've got vines here that we can use. I've even got this sort of shaft, if you like. I think it's like an air duct, air vent. That could be used as an ingress point. Find something that's thematic and try and make that fit in rather than just sticking ladders everywhere, because I think it does sort of ruin the aesthetics of some games if all you have got are ladders. And you also need to think about the positioning of them and remember that they don't just have to go up and down. So this is an Endor map that I built, the first one that I built. I was really, really happy with it. But after a couple of people had play tested it, they said to me, Rich, look, it's a really, really nice board, but XYZ, we need some more ingress points on there. So, you know, we added an extra one in here. We also added an extra one in on this side as well, whoops, on this side here for the characters, and we do have some really interesting ones that are here. So we've got some ingress points that are just, and again, to make these, all I did was take these bridges and I just shrunk them right down so it looks more like rope, and I've put on there it's an ingress point, but it's down only, so like a zip line allowing you to go down. So have some fun with it. Make sure they're positioned in relevant places. You can always put a little ladder in an annoying place to annoy Quinn because he absolutely hates it, but it's always worth, because we always tend to work, when I first started building maps, I was building them as the red player. I was looking at it just from the red player, but you want to make sure that you rotate the map out and see what it looks like as the blue player, and always put some characters down, right? I always like to put some characters down here. So if I just grab a couple of characters, I always like to put some on the board and take a look at what it looks like from deployment. So if I just put the deployment lines on here a second, go here and deploy this here, let's put these guys here, and you go, okay, well from there they've got options, or we could move him over here, you know. Okay, so from here they can make a dash, they can get up there, they can use that ingress point, and they can be up here. Just always try and make sure that they're in good relevant places, and always try and make sure that the map is balanced so that players have equal number of ingress points and can both get to the same sides. You know, here for example, we only have one ingress point on this side of the map, and it is only on the blue player's side. But what we did was something a little bit clever at the top here, was we made it so you could be pushed off this side of the board, but you couldn't be pushed off this side of the board. So yes, they don't have an ingress point, but they do have another advantage. So it's about balancing things out and trying to make sure from a gameplay perspective, and always be willing to take some constructive feedback and some constructive criticism, because, you know, sometimes you need to go back in, tweak things and make some slight adjustments. Okay guys, so, and you may be wondering, Rich, you are in the dark, you absolute idiot. What on earth are you doing? Well, the next thing and the last thing I want to talk about is lighting. Now, it may sound daft, but having a couple of lights on your TTS map can make the absolute world of difference. So, as you can see, I put my lights on there and it all looks really nice and bright again. So let's go over and take a look at a couple of examples of maps I've done before and after we added lighting, and just how much more atmospheric and I think really, really cool to play on it makes it look. So here we have the Coruscant underworld map that I created. I was going for a real sort of cyberpunk-esque type feel. You know, you go to the bottom streets of Coruscant or the underworld of Coruscant, and it's a little bit grimy. You've got all the neon lights and things like that. And whilst it may look like there's a couple of lights on here and here and things, these are not lights at all. These are just brightly coloured pink, purple things like this is here. So adding some lights in can completely change the look and feel. It can make it feel far more atmospheric, and for me, just far more enjoyable to play on and a little bit more immersive, which even though it's on TTS, we still can do. So let's take a look at what this looks like with all of the lights turned on. So here we go, guys. This is the exact same map, but with just a couple of lights added on there. And for me, at least, it makes it feel a lot more atmospheric. The neon lights that we've got going on make it feel far more like the grim, dark underworld, if you like, of Coruscant. And all I had was these little floor lights here that we've got. So you can see these ones here. You can transition them through to different colours. I'll also leave these in the little asset box that I'm talking about, but I just think it adds a little bit more atmosphere, makes the map have that much more vibrancy, and just makes it that overall bit more enjoyable to play on. The other thing you can also do as well is add yourself in some little creatures. Got some little womprats on this map. Yeah, there we go. So guys, once we have built our map, we're happy with it, we've completely finished it, the last thing we need to do is save it, and it couldn't be any simpler. So if we head over to here again, what you're going to see is this little save table. So we're going to save this, it's going to pull all of those assets out, and there we go, that is our map. Now, you do need to be really careful at this point. You cannot rename this bag. It needs to stay with the exact same name and the exact same description. But what I do, if you look here, let me take my Coruscant Underworld map out. So it says there, Coruscant Underworld shifting priorities. I've actually put, oh, try that again. I've put the map inside of it. So you can create another bag. So the way that we do that is just go to objects, go to not saved objects. No, that's the wrong one. Objects, components, tools, go to bag. We can then again right click, give this a name, XYZ test map. We can then take the map that we've got here, drop it inside this bag. Then we can take this, save the object into there, press the save button, and then you can then share that with anyone you want over Discord or email or wherever it may be, and then other people can take that map and load it in. And if you send it over to me, if you submit it on the TTS, I will put it in for consideration to be included in the mod itself. And there we go, guys. That is my quick guide on how I make maps for Shatterpoint in Tabletop Simulator. I did mention at the beginning of the video, we are having a little competition that we are running. So if you want your map to be put into the TTS mod, then you need to build your own. And you can do that. You can build your own. You can submit the entries. We're going to create a channel for them. In fact, there is already a channel on there for the maps that you can submit. I'm going to be doing some live streaming over the next couple of weeks where I'm actually just going to be sat down and building maps. I really enjoy it. So if you've got any favourites that you want to ask for, leave them down in the comment section below, and I'll try and make those the next ones that I make. I've done the 5 that I wanted to do. So far we've got the Endor map, we've got the Coruscant Underworlds, we've got the Hoth Aftermath, which was really fun, using some big AT-ATs. We've then also got the Dathomir board, and then we've just got the brand new Imperial hangar on there as well. So if there are any that you want and you want me to make, let me know down in the comment section below, but have a go at them yourself. If you want to tune in next week, as I mentioned, we're going to be doing some live streams, probably around about 8 PM time. Haven't decided the days yet. I'll put a schedule up of when I'm planning on doing it, where we'll be live streaming, building some maps. We can chat along. You can share ideas. You'll see the process I go through, which can be quite a torturous one at times. And yeah, we can take it from there. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please do leave a like, subscribe, share, all that kind of good stuff. And as always, it leaves me with just enough time to say stay well, keep safe, and until next time, may the Force be with you.